Hey everybody, welcome to the Happy Harvest Homestead. Today we're going to talk about what in the world is going on with all of our does having weird false pregnancies and not getting pregnant and then yes getting pregnant and all the weird stuff. I believe it all started in our old dirt floor colony. It was sometime in the fall. One of our does, Izzy, began nesting with straw. She was a full-grown adult who had had one litter a couple months earlier in the summer, but all those babies died soon after they were born. Then we moved her and a whole bunch of other rabbits into our remodeled dirt floor barn colony, and that had been about a month ago, and so right on time she was nesting about a month later when supposedly she was due to have babies. After nesting with straw, she started pulling fur in a nest box, and I was so sure she was going to have babies. Everything was lining up perfectly, and I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and she never gave birth. Now, it's been a while since this has all happened, but I think I remember that there were multiple other does. They weren't nesting, but they were digging burrows and preparing birthing areas, but they were acting like they were going to have babies soon too. And then it turned out that the buck we had in there with them, who was supposed to be getting them pregnant, actually was sterile. So these poor does were wanting to have babies, and the weather had cooled off, and the buck wasn't able to breed them. So I guess all the weird hormones that were happening were causing them to act like they were pregnant when they actually weren't. This isn't a super common thing that happens with rabbits, but it does happen. I've had it happen to me before in previous years, but never multiple rabbits all at once, which is what ended up happening. Then, shortly after realizing that no one was actually pregnant, we ended up moving all the rabbits out of the colony and abandoning that colony because the dirt floor ended up being not a very good idea. For most of the winter, all the meat rabbits were either in cages or in tractors that were raised up off the ground like cages, and I gave all the does an opportunity to breed. Acrobat accepted to breeding. Izzy accepted to breeding. If you remember, she was so ready to breed, she didn't try to run away from the buck at all. Zuzu kind of accepted to breeding, and then Constance and Leah really didn't want to breed. We gave Onyx one more chance to breed a doe by pairing him with Cattail, and then the two Angora rabbits, Sylvan and Jolty, were together and able to breed as well. So all our does were exposed to a buck of some sort, and then a couple weeks later, it seemed like all at once, most of our does started pulling fur and nesting in their nest boxes, even though they were only halfway through their pregnancies and not due to give birth for a long time. I think it started with Zuzu nesting and pulling fur and being really intentional about it, and then Acrobat started doing it, and then Izzy started doing it too, and it was all at the same time, which I thought was really weird. Early nesting when a doe should be pregnant is kind of a tricky thing. It could just be that the doe is preparing for babies way early and is just an early prepper, or it could mean that she did not get pregnant and her hormones are just making her nest when she actually is not going to have any babies. And with all the does nesting at the same time, I thought that was kind of weird, so I got really scared that they weren't pregnant, but there was nothing I could really do about it. I just had to wait and see what happened. So I waited and waited, and Acrobat gave birth to 8 healthy babies. She was right on time, and they're now about 3 weeks old, and they're all still alive and being fed and growing nicely. If you ever had any doubts about who these baby rabbits belong to, let me put those doubts to rest. Acrobat is definitely their mom. If you can believe it, all 8 babies have piled up in top of the hay feeder that is double their height, and all 8 of them are now snuggling on top of the hay feeder. I bet they watched their mama do it a couple times and then figured it out from her. Acrobat, you have made some very acrobatic babies. Then, I haven't told you guys this yet, but Zuzu also gave birth a couple days ago. She has 7 babies, but she's not being the best mom. She's having trouble keeping them all fed, so we'll see what happens with that. But there is a possibility she will lose some or all of her litter. But she gave birth way later than I expected, which means she couldn't have gotten pregnant when I bred her with Sterling. After the breeding, though, I put her and Sterling in the same cage, thinking she was already pregnant, just because I didn't have room to have him separately. So I guess what happened was, She accepted only 2 fall-offs from him when I was breeding them, and then ended up not getting pregnant even though she got some fall-offs. But then a couple days or maybe a week afterwards, she let him breed her again and actually got pregnant, and that's why her babies were so much later than they were supposed to be. So far, 2 of the 3 does who were nesting way early ended up actually being pregnant. So for a while, that made me super hopeful that Izzy would also have babies. Because of all the rabbits, her body seems to have wanted babies the most. When she's not able to be bred, she's having false pregnancies. When she is able to be bred, she doesn't run away from the buck at all. She lays there, inviting him to breed her. So for sure she's pregnant, right? Her body wants it so much. Well, unlike Zuzu, after her breeding session a couple months ago, she was housed with her sister instead of housed with a buck. So she didn't have any additional opportunities to get pregnant if she hadn't gotten pregnant the first time. But by her actions, I assumed she was pregnant the first time, as any rational person would. But like the rest of the rabbits, I've been waiting and waiting, but this time we have no babies, and she is multiple weeks past her due date. So I can now say Izzy is not pregnant, which is like a huge bummer because she wants it so badly, I want it so badly. Also, Constance and Leah, the does who didn't really want to get bred when we had our breeding session, haven't given birth either. So of all the 7 does who I gave an opportunity to get pregnant, only 2 of them have had babies. So that's a very bad thing. Now, to make this plot even thicker, let me share a very sobering idea with you that I'm finding myself forced to think of and maybe even accept as true. There is seeming to be more and more evidence building up against Sylvan, our Angora buck, that he is not able to breed. I know that sounds crazy because unlike Onyx, who is missing one of his balls, Sylvan obviously has all of his breeding equipment fully intact. And he is a proven buck who's fathered many kits, one of his children being Jolty, who we've kept and are trying to line breed with him. But here's the evidence against his breedability. To avoid getting Charlie kits, who would have 2 copies of the spotted gene, which could possibly make them weak or sick, I bred all the spotted rabbits to our non-spotted buck, and then only the non-spotted rabbits got bred to our now main breeding buck, Sterling. I figured having rabbits who are half meat rabbit breed and half non-meat rabbit breed is better than having a whole bunch of full meat rabbit kits that die because they have 2 copies of a spotted gene. Now, fast forward a month, and both does that Sterling bred had babies, and all the does that Sylvan bred did not have babies. Even Izzy, who obviously wants babies so bad. Also, Sylvan has been living full-time with his daughter Jolty. I think it's been like a year. He has had more than plenty opportunity to breed her, and I have seen him breeding her several times, but she's not had babies either. So for a while I thought she was the problem and she wasn't able to get pregnant or something weird and that he was okay. But now that all these other does are having the same problem, I'm wondering if he's the problem too. So if this is the case, that means that of our 3 rabbit bucks that we have, 2 of them are not able to breed, which is just so discouraging and crazy. And I'm not even sure what would cause Sylvan to not be able to breed in the first place because he's done it before. And nothing's changed. He's like the same rabbit, and he's still getting like plenty of nutrition, and he's not like 8 years old or something. He's still pretty young, so I'm not sure what's going on. So now you may be wondering, if Sylvan is sterile, then why is he the breeding buck I chose to put in the colony? Well, I didn't connect the dots and realize he was sterile till after I put him in the colony, so it's just been like, a couple of days ago that I realized all this was happening. Which is why I'm telling you now, and I didn't tell you earlier because I didn't realize till just now. So now I have to figure out what to do. Onyx, the sterile meat rabbit buck, is going to be butchered because he can't do his job. And thankfully, we have these New Zealand white rabbits that we were gifted so graciously. One of them's a doe, Edelweiss, who's in the colony, and there are 2 boys. So whenever I butcher Onyx, I'm going to pick the smaller of the 2 New Zealand white bucks and butcher him, and keep the bigger one as a breeding buck. Hopefully he actually can breed. But he's still like only 3 months old, so he won't be able to breed for a while. So right now, our only other option is Sterling, our spotted buck. And we have a whole bunch of spotted does in the colony. And you may think that I'm kind of silly in buying all these spotted rabbits, but in my defense, Sterling was only supposed to be a backup breeder. He was our just-in-case buck, which I'm so glad we have him now because I don't have to go in search of a new buck to buy. I just have a backup one. And when I bought him, we had a whole bunch more solid rabbits that I could breed him with. But most of our solid color rabbits have since passed away, and we're left with a whole bunch of spotted ones only, so circumstances just seem to be pushing me towards breeding 2 spotted rabbits together. Now, I've never bred spotted rabbits together before, obviously because I'm scared of it. So I don't have any first-hand knowledge. Is it really that big a deal, or is it like this rare thing? If I was swarmed by rabbits and was butchering kits all the time and everything was beautiful and perfect, then sure, maybe I'd experiment and test out the theories and see if it was true or not, or how much I should worry. But as y'all know, I need as many kits as I can get. So on purpose breeding rabbits where like half the litter could die is not really something I want to do. But it seems like I'm just being forced to do it now because I have no other bucks to breed with all my does. I'm kind of scared to accept that Sylvan's a bad buck because his personality is amazing. He's more like a pet who can also provide fiber and father kits. So that's like my emotional side, but then my practical side is like he's not doing half his job. Then do I just replace him with another buck who can also breed? I have to still figure all that out. Then another worry I have is, if I do put Sterling in with the does and they end up being pregnant with Sylvan's babies, like how am I going to tell whose babies they're pregnant with if I switch bucks out right away instead of waiting a month, seeing if they're pregnant or not, then switching bucks? But then, I have so many, oh my gosh, we have so many just like what ifs. So another what if is, what if I do wait a whole month and they end up not being pregnant and then I've wasted a whole month when I could just stick Sterling in like tomorrow and have them all pregnant for real because it's February and we're already halfway through the breeding season and we've only had 2 litters and every day it's getting closer and closer to summertime when it's too hot to breed and I want to get as many babies as possible throughout the rest of the year. So I guess it would be better to have more mystery babies than fewer babies who I was sure on their parentage. As soon as our little white buck is old enough, I'm probably going to put him in because one, all those white rabbits, their body structure is like beautiful and they're growing super fast and they look nice and meaty, so obviously we want that. We've been paying attention to hardiness for so long that our body structure has kind of fallen to the wayside, so most of our breeders aren't really the best in body size or shape, so it'd be nice to get some of that back in there. And then also, I don't have to worry about Charlie kits anymore if we have one spotted parent and one non-spotted parent. But then I guess in the meantime, my best option, or honestly my only option, is to stick Sterling in there and just deal with the repercussions. Okay, sweet Sylvan boy, it's time for you to leave the colony. Say goodbye to your daughter Jolty. She's gonna stay in and hopefully get bred by Sterling. Okay, say goodbye. Say bye to your friends. Goodbye, Cattail. Okay. Nope. Sterling, come here. Come here. Okay. Back to your cage. There you go. I'm sorry again. At least you had a taste of freedom for a little bit. It's better than nothing, I guess. Now that the sad part's over, now we get to do the happy part and bring Sterling out of his little tractor and let him be free with all his girls. Okay, Sterling, you ready? This is your lucky day. You are now our main breeding buck, which means you get all the does, you get to breed all of them, and you, sir, get to be in the colony, the nice big colony, so you can exercise. Here we go. Hooray! What do you think, big boy? I feel bad for these poor rabbits. They already have had to go through such a hard time of getting used to living with all these new rabbits. So now as soon as everything's calmed down, we switch it up so they have a new buck again. So I'm hoping to kind of diffuse any problems with some treats. Oh no, the chickens think it's for them. They heard the bucket and they're all excited. I'm sorry, birdies, it's not for you, it's for the bunnies. I'm sorry. Oh, I feel so bad. Now, introducing a new buck is different than a new doe. Bucks kind of have their own separate pecking order, whereas the does are far more fighty with each other. Though some bucks can be fighty as well. But it looks like Sterling is not one of those. He's smelling, I'm assuming, Sylvan. Sylvan's been marking his territory everywhere, so Sterling probably is going to spend most of his time remarking everything to claim it as his, which isn't a bad thing. I just want to be here. Oh, look, that stream of pee. I think a chicken got it in its eye. So he's just going to be peeing everywhere. Marking scent with his chin. I'm not super worried about him, like, behaving or anything. He's not completely new at this. In the past, he has lived with multiple does in a tractor, though he's never been the main buck of an entire colony. So he's moving up in the world. See, I told you. Look at that marking. He just sprayed that pee. Usually rabbits pee in a corner just normally, but he's spraying it on purpose. Look, it's a doe. Look at her. You've never met her before. Never ever in your whole life. Look at all these does to breed. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now we're starting to fight. From her behavior in the cage, and a few days ago when we put all the rabbits in the colony, and today, I really do think that Constance is now the herd queen. When she was younger, she was a lot more docile and timid, but as she's grown, she's getting pretty aggressive and dominant, which isn't a super bad thing, I guess. Every colony does need a herd queen, and she's not being crazy mean like Elodie used to be, but it's very obvious that she is the herd queen. Sometimes you can't really tell, but in this case, you can definitely tell. Everything will calm down again, though, once they get used to the new buck. Okay, so far there's been a few scuffles, but nothing that major. So I feel pretty good about leaving and letting the rabbits keep getting acquainted with each other without supervision. Bye, bunnies!